tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
This is an interesting piece of property because it's 5 hectares or roughly 10 acres that is right on the water.
Ending a 7-year legal battle over the billion-dollar development of one of Vancouver's last pieces of waterfront land.
As a result of the senseless act, our wolf pack, has lost 2 family members.
Also, 1 wolf found dead, another still missing as the Greater Vancouver Zoo deals with the fallout.
Fallible difference of opinion when it came particularly to environmental policies.
Plus, booted out, the BC Liberals remove an MLA from Caucus over climate change denial.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. Well, staff at the Greater Vancouver Zoo say they are heartbroken with one of the wolves that escaped its enclosure this week found dead. They're also still trying to find another animal on the loose. Dan Burrett joins us live after an emotional update today. Dan, what more do we know?
Anita, it's a grim end for one of the animals after the zoo says someone deliberately cut their perimeter fence and the enclosure that housed 9 gray wolves and 6 pups. 2 wolves went missing, Chia, a 3-year-old female, and Tempest, a 1-year-old cub.
Tragically, we were heartbroken this morning to discover Chia deceased on the side of the road of 264th Street. Our search and rescue operation continues, and we are asking for the public's help to reunite Tempest with her family.
No, they presume Chia was hit by a car. Rustad says they believe Tempest is still near the zoo. She has gray-brown puppy fur and white markings on her face. She admits the chances of Tempest surviving in the wild are slim, and they're asking anyone who sees her to contact the zoo, Langley RCMP or conservation officers. You're not to approach her. Though she's not considered extremely dangerous, Rustad says the zoo plans to reopen on Sunday, though staff are exhausted trying to find the wolves. Langley Mounties are investigating what happened at the zoo as a break-and-enter and mischief, Anita.
Yeah, and Dan, the release of these animals and now a death comes after the zoo has faced some serious criticism over the years over how it treats animals.
Yes, the Vancouver Humane Society has been working on a report highlighting numerous incidents over the years. The SPCA looked into allegations of animal cruelty put forward by the society. The report found some animals at the zoo didn't have enough space. In another case, a jaguar bit an employee. They want more animal sanctuaries in place of zoos. In a statement just a few minutes ago that we received from the Humane Society, says these situations reiterate the lack of adequate safety and protections of the animals at the zoo. Reporters asked today if the zoo has a message for whoever allegedly cut the fences.
Do your research, visit the zoo, interact with our staff, just look at the animals. Zoos around the world do amazing work for species conservation. We are here because we love animals. We want to protect animals. We want to ensure that animals have a place in wild spaces, for as long as they can.
And again, anyone who sees Tempest, the small wolf, it's still missing. They're asked to call the zoo, conservation officers, or police. Anita.
Dan Burrett live tonight. Thank you. Well, there's a new threat tonight for people already living on the margins in Vancouver's downtown east side. Threats of violence and harm printed out on anonymous flyers delivered to their doorsteps. Valpuri shows us a neighborhood on edge.
It's a clear message.
It is definitely a threat, saying that they're going to burn down tents and belongings with propane and gasoline.
The anonymous flyer appeared among dozens of makeshift shelters along the busiest street in Vancouver's poorest neighborhood.
It's very direct and very violent, and it implies that there's support to the intent, which is to light us on fire.
We have somebody sitting here at the corner of the tent and watching all the time.
North America's oldest sanctioned safe injection site is also a target.
Leave now or suffer the consequences of your selfish addiction.
Tensions are already high here. Less than 10 days ago, city crews began to dismantle the months-old encampment.
The homeless people are really easy targets because they're out in the open and So, people can throw their rage at that.
Last month, a shooter targeted transient people in Langley, an hour outside of Vancouver. 2 were killed, 2 were injured. That same day, Vancouver police reported a woman sitting on a downtown east side sidewalk was deliberately set on fire. And later, a man's shelter was set ablaze. The attacks have left the community and advocates shaken. They wonder, what will it take to get action so that people who don't have a place to live are less vulnerable? David Eby, the person most likely to succeed John Horgan as BC's premier this fall, promises swift action on homelessness.
I think it's the province that needs to step up and take accountability and responsibility for the neighborhood. I think we're now beyond the point where the city can respond.
The paper threat gives people until the weekend to clear out.
Like, we're all people too. I'm a mother. I'm somebody's daughter. We're not just addicts or junkies that don't need housing or don't need help with anything.
Vancouver police say the threat is being investigated. Belle Puri, CBC News, Vancouver.
Not far from that neighborhood, a years-long court battle has come to an end over Vancouver's Plaza of Nations. It's the former Expo 86 site on the north shore of False Creek. Our John Hernandez reports on the past and future of one of the last pieces of undeveloped land on the city's waterfront.
It might not be much more than a parking lot, but the path has been paved for this empty lot to reclaim some of its past glory. The Plaza of Nations along Vancouver's False Creek was one of the major hubs during Expo 86, a plaza for performances and live events. The land was sold in 1989 for $40 million to Singapore businessman Oi Hong Leong. He's long had plans to redevelop the site, which on Thursday took a big step forward after a years-long legal battle came to an end.
This is an interesting piece of property because it's 5 hectares or roughly 10 acres that is right on the water. It's one of the last undeveloped pieces of waterfront in Vancouver.
The fight started in 2015 when developer Concord Pacific argued Oi had backed out of a deal to jointly develop the lot. The Supreme Court of Canada dismissed one final appeal from Concord, allowing the owner to carry out his ambitious vision for the site, which will be named Expo Gardens. The first phase includes a 28-story terraced building, which will include more than 800 units, including social housing, a civic center, and ice rink.
But what they're also looking at is how to marry in and tie in the seawall and develop public space so that we actually do have some new public space opportunities.
The development application has received preliminary approval pending conditions, including designs for more pedestrian-friendly architecture and amenities.
The neighborhood and community around False Creek has been very vocal about what they would like to see and what they need included.
City Councillor Melissa DiGenova says future phases of the redevelopment need further community guidance.
The courts have made a decision, I understand that, and I understand that things will be moving forward, but hoping that the community's voices will be heard.
There's no timeline on when construction on this historic piece of land might begin, but the owner hopes it could be as early as later this year. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
MLA John Rustad has been booted from the Liberal caucus over comments questioning climate change. As Mayor Baines reports, new BC Liberal leader Kevin Falcon says it's been a pattern of behavior with Rustad that's led him to this.
Kevin Falcon says MLA John Rustad has no place in his caucus. Falcon says he told Rustad that his removal from the Liberal ranks is effective immediately. Falcon says Rustad's posts on social media about climate change science led to his decision.
If we've got anyone that just has fundamental doubts about the importance of dealing with climate change, then they're not going to be, frankly, welcome. It's not going to work.
Falcon spoke to Rustad today.
I couldn't get the satisfaction that he was prepared to be that team player, and so I fired him from caucus.
In posts on both Facebook and Twitter, Rustad shared a chart and post arguing that people had been hoodwinked by climate change science and they should be glad CO2 is being emitted into the atmosphere. Rustad was first elected as MLA in 2009. He says he has no ill will towards the BC Liberal Party or Kevin Falcon, but does have an issue with environmental policies.
And and I want to be able to be vocal about it. And my leader disagreed with me and did not want me to be local. And so we came to that impasse. Of course, climate change is real. There's no question climate change is real. And there's no question that man is having an impact on our climate. Where I have a problem is when we implement environmental policies that hurt people. And we're seeing that today, whether it is, on the cost of fuel and the cost of food.
His use of social media has been criticized in the past, including a Facebook post questioning the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines to Indigenous members of his riding on a priority basis.
Rustad will now sit as an independent. Falcon says his former role as forestry critic will now go to Kamloops MLA Todd Stone. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, you just have to go outside to know another day of heat across the province, and a number of records are being broken, some set 45 years ago. As our Anita Bathe tells us, you're being warned to adapt with this type of weather expected to be the new normal.
BC is baking, and the heat even has a grip on the end of summer semester.
It's bad, if you want to study properly.
Suling Ji is preparing for exams here. The air-conditioned space is one of 3 cooling spaces for UBC students right now.
Make me work more efficiently, and it can calm me down.
At Simon Fraser University, some exams were switched to cooler classrooms. A number of heat warnings have been issued this week, and some single-day temperature records smashed, with areas around Comox, Courtenay, Lillooet, and Pemberton hitting the hottest temperatures since 1977, when it was 37.8 degrees in the Fraser Canyon compared to 38.2 degrees Celsius yesterday. Now, parts of the province are still seeing temperatures from 29 to 40 degrees. It's why misting stations like this are so important. While this heat wave won't last much longer, experts say with climate change, get ready for more hot weather.
It's like walking up and down a series of small hills, and there's warm periods and there's cool periods. And what climate change is doing is just adding a slope to that entire thing. So going up the hill, you now get to a higher point, and then when you come back down, you don't come back down as far.
Experts say it's best to think ahead.
Honestly, planting more trees in neighborhoods is going to be really important.
Back at UBC, more relief is coming for students like Ji.
All new buildings will actually have some form of air conditioning to allow for cooling. And that's really done in reaction to what we expect the trend to be in the years ahead.
And as the sun scorches on, experts are also reminding you to keep hydrated, check in with the most vulnerable, and expect more warnings in weeks and years ahead. Anita Bathe, CBC News, Vancouver.
For more on those heat warnings, Johanna joins us now with the weather forecast. So huge swaths of BC were cooking today.
Yeah, Anita, it was another scorcher again today, with daily high temperature records being broken once again across parts of the province, with temperatures into the mid to high 30s. Let me show you the heat warnings that were in place for now 2 days. We will see them begin to drop as marine air moves into place. Overnight lows have also been uncomfortable, and fire danger continues to creep up. We're seeing more and more of those high to extreme pockets in the hot and dry conditions. Okay, already starting to see some cloud cover, high cloud right now, the nice wispy stuff move in from above. That's thanks to this low pressure system. It will continue to push in over the next 24 hours, bringing that risk for showers tomorrow morning. Now, it's not a guaranteed risk of widespread showers, but I do think we'll see some kind of precipitation across the south coast. Really light, not nearly enough to replenish the moisture that we've lost in this hot and dry second half of the summer. And yes, watching those pop-up thunderstorms tomorrow in the interior. BC Wildfire Services also watching that situation closely. Look at the drop, though. A good 5-degree temperature drop, still bringing those afternoon highs above seasonal for Friday. And watch as they rebound a little bit for the weekend. Here's Sunday, 34 degrees in places like Kelowna, Cranbrook, still looking at the high 20s out towards Fraser Valley. Add in a little bit of a humidex. That's a hot weekend. 34 and through Kelowna tomorrow. Again, watching for those risk of pop-up thunderstorms in the southern interior. And then we dry right back out. So a new high pressure system looks to build back in. I think we'll see a few more clouds around this weekend, lingering into early next week. But our forecast models do bring that hot weather back in. There's a chance we may see some heat warnings this time next week. We'll have to keep an eye on just how strong the next ridge of high pressure gets.
Thanks,
Anita?
Joe. Thanks, Joe. As Joe said, the risks are considerable for wildfires given the hot, dry conditions, but some relief for people forced to leave their homes because of the Karameas Creek wildfire. All evacuation orders for the fire have been lifted, with crews making progress on the blaze. Firefighters have also been helped by a combination of cooler weather and higher humidity. The fire broke out 3 weeks ago and has grown to cover nearly 70 square kilometers. But the BC Wildfire Service says residents are not out of the woods just yet. With warm, dry temperatures in the forecast this week, it could all lead to more wildfire activity.
As we're getting through the week with this warming and drying trend, we're seeing increased activity primarily in the afternoons when those temperatures do kind of peak. And fire behavior is also being influenced by downslope winds in the evening. However, it is primarily at this point topography driven and then influenced by those warmer temperatures in the afternoon, decreased humidity, and then poor overnight recoveries. So we're not seeing the humidity overnight that we were this past weekend.
There are currently 113 active fires burning in BC. 6 of them are fires of note. Well, part of Golden Ears Provincial Park is going to be shut down for the rest of the 2022 camping season. Access to the North Beach campground is no longer possible because of structural damage to Gold Creek Bridge. It happened after a car accident, and engineers say the bridge is not safe. This means cancellations for everyone with camping reservations there this year. A full refund will be given. And UBC's Senate has voted to rescind its approval of an honorary degree awarded to a Catholic bishop and former Kamloops residential school principal, John Fergus O'Grady.
We have what evidence I feel like we need on the basis of what we already know about the residential schools and the organization involved.
Aside from one abstention, the motion passed unanimously. O'Grady, who died years ago, received an honorary law degree in 1986. UBC says the Senate plans to develop a process to review concerns about other honorary degree holders with concerning backgrounds. To a story now that may resonate with some of you who have had someone mispronounce your name. The question is, when it happens, do you correct them?
What's the meaning? A wise person. So I took out wise and now I realize I'm just person.
People always go Sigawa. My name is Sigawa. But I don't know, it's a pronunciation thing and I don't really correct.
We actually spoke with several people today, and it was sort of a mixed bag of responses. But one Surrey teacher, Kuljinder Kaur Brar, wants to give people more confidence to own their names. Her children's book, My Name is Sajan Singh, is the story of a young Sikh boy who loses his sense of identity after his teacher mispronounces his name at school. Brar says this story is based off her own experiences and those of her young son, Sajan.
After he was born, my husband and I, we weren't really sure how to spell his name. So people would pronounce his name as Sajan as opposed to anything else. Because when we were growing up, people always mispronounced our names. We didn't want that for our son. But unfortunately, when we started taking him to medical appointments, people were mispronouncing his name as Sajan. And that was very upsetting for me because I just didn't want Sajan to go through the pain of like your identity. It's kind of like an identity crisis.
Brar hopes her book will prompt educators and parents to have conversations with kids about embracing their identities and speaking up if their names are mispronounced. Okay, the fair at the Peony is back this Saturday for its 112th year. Visitors can expect to see some new things, including the Canoe Cultures exhibit. The head carver says it's an opportunity to see live demonstrations.
And we look forward to showcasing our canoes and some of the traditional teachings with the hundreds and thousands of British Columbians who will be visiting the fair this year.
He is the Squamish Nation 8th generation carver. Plus, the Peony will feature perennial favorites like Super Dogs and summer night concerts. The fair opens this Saturday and runs until September 5th. A potential weak spot discovered on the virus that causes COVID-19. What this means for prevention and treatment coming up. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream tonight. Well, a Manitoba farmer is continuing his tradition of helping people take the ultimate sunflower-themed selfies while also raising money to stamp out hunger. Take a look.
Wow, look at this. This is going to be a good picture. Yeah. This explosion of yellow is right in the middle of southern Manitoba.
It's great fun. It's a great thing to do with the grandkids and, a nice day. Good drive. It's perfect.
That makes fields like this a great spot to snap a selfie, but that can mean trampled crops. Not all farmers are as welcoming as Dean Taves.
Part of the idea also came from some of the tension that comes with farmers and city people when they come out to the field. They want to see the sunflowers, but it's essentially trespassing unless they have permission. And so we thought, what if we gave people permission to come and enjoy themselves in the field?
It was really nice that there's a place that welcomed us onto their property to take their photos, and I could post on Instagram and not get in trouble. That way. Yeah.
Taves made trails for people to walk around and leave a donation. That money and proceeds from the crop go to Canadian Food Grains Bank, which helps feed people around the world.
The Taves family opened up the sunflower field pretty spontaneously last year to guests. They still managed to raise $2,000 in cash donations and made another $20,000 off the sunflower crop. And this year, they expect those numbers to grow.
So you get one Instagrammer with a lot of followers, and then all of a sudden there's lots of Instagrammers coming out to do copycat pictures.
One more, 1, 2.
We would like to help and donate something for the community.
For Taves, there's another benefit, introducing city people to farming.
As time goes on, as people are more separated from agriculture, it's just a pleasure to have people enjoy what we do.
All the more reason to smile for the camera. Emily Brass, CBC News, McGregor, Manitoba.
Welcome back. A new study suggests brain fog and other mental health issues are more common among COVID-19 patients 2 years after the infection. The research by Oxford University had compared them with patients with other respiratory infections. Abby Kugadasan spoke with the authors of the study.
An Oxford University study looked at 2 groups in the United States. Each group was made up of more than 1 million patients. One included people who had recovered from COVID more than 2 years ago. The second group was made up of people who had other respiratory infections. The researchers found that those who'd been infected with COVID were 10 to 15% more likely to be at risk for long-term conditions. Seniors had a higher chance of dementia. Adults 64 and under were more likely to face brain fog. And for children, the risk of developing epilepsy doubled, though it was still rare, 160 in 10,000 cases.
The good news for children and adolescents is that
they are not at an increased risk of mood and anxiety disorders at any point after the COVID-19 illness. So this is something that seems to be specific to adults, but does not happen in children. And that's very reassuring indeed. Another very reassuring news is that children did not appear to be at an increased risk of brain fog.
Variants were looked at too. The lead researcher, Paul Harrison, says Omicron was less severe than the Delta strain, but there was no difference between them when it came to longer-term disorders. He also spoke about his previous study that addressed vaccinations. He says they save lives, but survivors are no more immune to long-term conditions.
So although the vaccinations were very effective at stopping you getting COVID in the first place, if you're unlucky enough to get a breakthrough infection, it didn't really affect the things we're measuring in this paper.
The researchers acknowledge more studies are needed, especially in other countries, to better understand the long-term effects of COVID-19. Abby Koadas, CBC News, London.
Looking closer to home, a new study out of UBC could mean better treatment options for COVID-19. Rapidly mutating variants of the virus have been a thorn in the side of doctors and scientists, but now local researchers have found a so-called weak spot across major variants like BA1 and BA2, and that could have major implications on how we treat COVID. To help us make sense of these discoveries, I'm joined tonight live by Dr. Iris Gorfinkel. Dr. Gorfinkel is the family doctor and vaccine researcher. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Gorfinkel, this sounds complicated. I'm no science buff. So in simple terms, can you explain first off what exactly a weak spot is, this vulnerability?
Yes, this research is actually called a game changer. And it's called that for a good reason. You'll remember that the vaccines we have are aimed at the spike protein. That's the key protein on the coat of the novel coronavirus that allows it to enter our body's cells. So on that protein, there's really two different types of amino acids that make it up. One type is a stable type that doesn't change very much, but the other type is constantly changing. And that's the part that keeps mutating. That's the part that allows the virus to escape from our vaccines. So what this researchers did was take the virus and use a special technology called cryo-electron microscopy. This is something that won a Nobel Prize in 2017. And now we see the fruit of that, because what they found was that stable part of the spike protein for which, in theory, an antibody could be made, a specific vaccine could be made to be aimed at that stable part of the spike protein, and voila, we might just have what we've been looking for, which is that vaccine, which will cover all of the variants. And so far, this particular grouping of that spike protein is doing just that. It may give us a universal vaccine, but understand it's still very early.
Okay, so that's probably pretty exciting, I think, for scientists and for doctors to think about. That's vaccines. What does this mean for future treatments of COVID?
Imagine if we, in fact, had that stable part of the spike protein that did not change. We could create a single vaccine that could be effective against future variants. Now, that's just theoretical, right? Because so far, we created one vaccine, and as time went on, it just got better and better at escaping the immunity. What was happening is that it's like an antibiotic resistance. It selects out the strains that can in fact escape it. So in theory, that could happen even with this type of a vaccine. But the fact is, it could be a game changer initially. It could give us immunity that may be longer lasting. It's just too early to tell at this point. But basically what it provides is kind of a proof of concept. Moving forward, it gives us a lot to work with future vaccines.
A lot to work with, but of course, studies always have limitations. What are the limitations of this one?
Oh, here I eat the humble pie. It's always that when it comes to this, and I'll share with you. They are that this is not a vaccine study. This is a proof that parts of that spike protein are stable enough that could be used to make a vaccine. So we don't even have that vaccine just yet. And even when we do, we need the clinical trials to show its safety first and then efficacy. And then following that, we would need a lot of real world data to prove that it is in fact not just working, but also durable. It lasts longer, because that's been a major problem with the vaccines we've had so far.
Dr. Iris Gorfinkel, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Many thanks for having me.
And today, the province released the latest COVID-19 data, which they do only once a week now. More than 4,000 people have now died from the virus in BC. The province is also reporting a slight dip in hospitalizations, falling to 336, down 32 from last week. 22 people remain in critical care, which matched last week's count. Canadian pharmacies are struggling with a shortage of over-the-counter children's fever and pain medicine. At least one hospital in Toronto suggested prescriptions might be necessary to get them. But as Chris Reyes explains, experts say don't panic.
This is normally where we would keep our Tylenol suspensions.
At this Toronto pharmacy, Tylenol and Advil for kids are on back order. On Monday, the city's hospital for sick children said prescriptions for pain and flu medications might be necessary because of a nationwide shortage.
The shortage is not new. We have seen some rolling shortages since about the beginning of the year. So we did see a situation where the demand for these products did start to outstrip the production.
Health Canada says no prescription is needed for the over-the-counter drugs. Pharmacist Marcos Massey agrees, but says one may be needed for the generic version pharmacists can make on site.
In an emergency situation, something like Tylenol or acetaminophen can be prescribed as a suspension, which can be made by pharmacists behind the counter.
Ontario's health minister says the province is also monitoring the situation.
We are obviously monitoring very closely to make sure that there aren't shortages that are going to impact in a wider way across Ontario.
At this pharmacy, cold and flu medications for adults are still available, and some doctors say that's an option.
If your child is a bit older, there are also ones you can crush that would be chewable medication or even medication used for adults, depending on the weight and the size of your child.
Tylenol suspension is not a super difficult medication to manufacture.
Massey's prediction that he'll be able to order the kids' medication in a couple of months. Until then, his advice to parents, stop stockpiling them. Chris Reyes, CBC News, Toronto.
More complaints for Canada's airlines, this time with urgent calls for the transport regulator to get involved and demand better. That's next.
Attention all health addicts. If you want to get in shape but lack the willpower, meet a Keep Fit expert with a difference. He makes house calls that encourage his customers to exercise their hearts out right in their own backyards. The friendly Keep Fit caller is Bruce Merritt, and he was observed arriving at a house in Vancouver by one of our overweight and rather incredulous reporters, Fred Causey.
Well, I don't know about you, but I could get depressed. Look at this guy. It's enough to make women weep and men groan. Business must be good, though. He's got an assistant. First of all, before all this, comes a consultation. Bruce works out goals and limitations with his clients. They may want to work on endurance or stamina. They may want to strengthen particular groups of muscles. Or they may have a weakness they want to overcome, like Joan Watchorn, who has a bit of a bad back.
I have a program that's designed especially for me, to fit my goals and objectives and for my weak points. And so I know when I'm exercising to a program that's specifically for me.
Now, is it very expensive relative to other things?
No, not at all.
What do you charge for this service?
Anywhere from a card program is basically around $40, and that is all the exercises written up on little recipe cards. And then from there we get into the same type of program, on, say, a stereo cassette program. If the people have, say, a Walkman or a stereo when they're home, you can get the whole program done on a stereo tape, and then you can just listen to it. There's no fumbling with cards or anything. And then the last type of program we offer is on a video cassette program, and there, that fee is $150.
Those are one-time only fees. For $25 an hour, Bruce will come to your home and work out with you.
Feel like working your legs?
Public or private, no matter how you cut it, folks, this is painful work.
That's it. Back down. And one more. Great, that's excellent. Good technique. Okay.
Something new in the world of fitness is power walking. It gets your heart rate up without the potential for knee and ankle damage, which are common among joggers.
So power walking is just a very stepped up, quick walking pace, and we can increase the resistance by adding weights, ankle weights, wrist weights, or as here we're going to walk up a slight incline that will also increase the rate.
This gives me a great idea. How about power lounging? I got the extra weight, and I love to be on an incline. You think anyone will go for it?
To travel now, more airline passengers say they are being unfairly denied compensation over flight delays and cancellations. As Sophia Harris tells us, there are growing calls for Canada's transport regulator to get involved and get tough on the carriers.
This rejection doesn't ring true.
Shaquille Batty says he can't make sense of WestJet's letter denying him compensation for his 3-hour flight delay in June. Under federal rules, airlines only have to pay compensation up to $1,000 if the flight disruption is within the airline's control. In an email, WestJet told Batty the delay was outside of its control, but didn't say why. The airline also said the delay happened after departure.
The delay was pre-departure, and I have all the evidence to show it was pre-departure. So I don't understand what they're trying to tell me.
I definitely don't feel that they're following the rules.
Leslie Lowe asked for compensation after her flight last month was delayed by a full day. Air Canada rejected her claim without providing any explanation.
I think they don't have a valid reason, and I think that if they were to really be honest and transparent as to what happened, that they know that they'd be liable and they'd have to compensate the passengers on the flight.
The Canadian Transportation Agency says airlines must provide a comprehensive explanation when denying compensation.
If they don't, that could either be the subject of its own complaint or potentially enforcement action.
The CTA has yet to issue any fines involving compensation claims. Some consumer advocates say it's time for the transport regulator to get tough with non-compliant airlines.
I think the airlines are aware that they're not really being held accountable and they can get away with it. You have to have enforcement, and you also have to have significant fines and penalties to make the airlines act.
The CTA says unhappy passengers can file a complaint and that tough penalties for non-compliant airlines may be coming.
We are indeed looking at all the enforcement options.
The Canadian Transportation Agency says it has been inundated with complaints and that it will take time for the agency to get to all of them. Okay, moving on to other news. The Vatican says there isn't enough evidence to open a church investigation into Cardinal Marc Ouellette. The Quebec Cardinal is among 88 clergy members named in a recent class action lawsuit involving alleged sexual assault. Ouellette has been accused by a woman of unwanted touching and kissing, as well as sexual harassment. She is one of more than 100 alleged victims represented by the class action lawsuit. Well, it's probably across the country, illegal guns used in crimes that are hard to trace. Now, Winnipeg police have been given some funding to help track firearms. And as the CBC's Andrew Wilds reports, The hope is this will help to find out where illegal guns came from in the first place.
Go ahead, see if you can make out the serial number on this gun. It used to be etched into the metal like this, but someone's worked very hard to make the number go away. The province announced it's giving the Winnipeg police $17,000 to help them bring those numbers back.
This funding will provide the Firearms Investigation and Analysis section the ability to safely lift obliterated serial numbers from firearms using a combination of physical, chemical, and particle recovery techniques.
Inspector Elton Hall says criminals erase serial numbers from guns to make them untraceable, but police can restore those numbers with special equipment and training.
It allows us the ability to backtrack that gun pretty quickly here and determine who had it, who was arrested with it. You can start determining maybe what gang is using it, were they trafficking it, are they trafficking it into the city, was it used in crimes within a city, is it a gun that's being trafficked amongst gangs in a city?
3D printed guns, or ghost guns, are another major concern in Winnipeg. Police say the city has one of the highest rates of ghost guns in Canada. Justice Minister Kelvin Gerson says he's considering bringing a bill here to stop it.
Yeah, it's something we're certainly looking at as a potential. There are two different issues that are going on. There's the 3D printed guns in plastic. There's the other importation of parts for guns.
The money comes from the Criminal Property Forfeiture Fund. Andrew Wiles, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Calgary-based oil giant Enbridge got a favorable ruling in a Michigan court today. This is the latest chapter in the lengthy legal battle with the state over the cross-border pipeline Line 5. A judge has sided with the company, saying the case belongs in federal court, not a state one. That's a blow to Michigan's governor, who has been at the forefront of efforts to shut the pipeline down. She's been citing fears of a spill where it crosses the Great Lakes. The pipeline's proponents, including the Canadian government, see the project as a crucial source of energy for Ontario, Quebec, and several U.S. states. At 6:40, a time-lapse from the top of the Sea to Sky gondola in Squamish with a beautiful view through the day and into the evening overlooking the Howe Sound. We're back after this break. A woman who recently bought her first home using a fledgling online auction platform is now warning other buyers about it. It's called Unreserved. The Ottawa-based startup claims all of its listings are pre-inspected and backs every house it auctions with a 1-year warranty. But as Alexander Bathe reports, one customer says her effort to get compensation for undisclosed defects has been months long and a nightmare.
I counted on Unreserved's inspection, and I think they completely failed me.
Jennifer Mealing placed the winning bid on her first house back in December using fledgling auction website Unreserved. But before she could even move in, she found dozens of defects not disclosed in the listing. The furnace was corroded and leaking. Aluminum siding was loose. The basement contained mold. And then a shocking discovery.
All of a sudden, my contractor contacts me. He's like, I think your house has been in a fire. There's like a serious problem here. So they didn't write in.
Since then, she's been documenting everything wrong with her house.
It was something like over $100,000 of issues with the property.
She's been flagging these issues with Unreserved, but
they told me that their warranty didn't cover it and it wasn't their problem.
Unreserved's founder and CEO, Ryan O'Connor, wouldn't go on camera for an interview for this story, but said in a statement that every issue with Mealing's home is treated as a separate warranty claim, and almost all of them cost less to fix than the $5,000 deductible. But, he says, the company stands behind every home it sells. This veteran home inspector has seen some of Unreserved's inspection reports.
There's really nothing in there that would qualify as a home inspection.
Is your bale of hay cozy?
The cost of the repairs has left Mealing nearly broke.
It's currently going to take me between 7 to 10 years working a second job to be able to pay off what's happened here.
Unreserved promises consumers transparency and protection.
When a business doesn't live up to its core promise, you either do course correct or you die.
It wouldn't have hurt their back end, their business model to actually give a shit about someone who trusted them and purchased a property through them.
Just hours after CBC contacted Unreserved for comment, the company reached out to Mealing's lawyer, breaking a nearly 2-month silence to negotiate a settlement. That process is still ongoing. Alexander Bathe, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, summertime is full of noisy, colorful fun for a lot of children, but for some, it can get a little overwhelming. A sensory play area in Labrador City helps kids enjoy at their own speed. Take a look.
This room is really inclusive for all children. A safe place for children to explore different lights, colors, textures, sounds. This is what we call our harp room. We have a group of families that generously donated money in the initial stages of the harp room when the kids club was first opened. It's always been a sensory room with the intention of providing a safe, calming space to be inclusive for all children to access the indoor playground and to have a quiet, calming space where they can come and socialize and play.
So when I heard that they were doing a sensory type room, I was so excited. Having a autistic child who is very sensory seeking and has different sensory needs, it's amazing that there's a room here especially designed to accommodate children like Charles.
It's my turn. It's the same sort of thing. There's some fine motor skill development, sensory development through sounds, colors, tactile textures. We have our micro LED light display. And so this is really fun. Kids can interact with the lights. They can go inside the waterfall or they can kind of come outside of it. Some kids like to gather the lights up and look at them. And then I think our most popular corner would be the corner with our bubble tube, and we have that surrounded by 2 mirrors, and the purpose there is for kids to interact with themselves in the mirrors. When the indoor playground gets overstimulating, because it can get loud, it can get busy, this provides those individuals with differing sensory needs a space where they can come. It's quiet.
All the things in here are evidence-based. It's nice knowing that it's not just random things that they put in here, that it's known to have positive benefits for those type of kids who need the sensory stimulation.
A young Inuk athlete received a hero's welcome home after making history. He's the first competitor from Nunavut to win a gold medal at the Canada Games, and he's sharing his story of personal loss and how it played a part in his big win with the CBC's Anita Taylor.
With his gold medal around his neck, Ikiluak Avalak is greeted first by his father, one of hundreds of people filling the Cambridge Bay Airport.
Oh, we're all so excited, just bubbling behind my head. I'm so glad that everybody's here to support the whole team.
Then a hero's parade around the Western Nunavut community where about 2,000 people live. The celebrations continued into the evening, including videos featuring the athletes and a recap of that gold medal match. The 18-year-old says being Nunavut's first ever gold medalist still feels like a dream.
It's definitely a lifetime memory that I'll always hold.
And he credits this man, his coach, who says Avalak's win was the most emotional he's ever been.
It's not only for him, but it's for all Inuit and for all of Nunavut, because it shows that, you can come from a small Indigenous community, Inuit community, and you can reach the top of the stage.
But there's another person special to Avalak who he says helped him win gold. His late brother Johanna, who took his own life in 2015.
He was my big brother, yes. Just thinking that he was there. I didn't see him there, but I felt his presence there, and that gave me a big confidence booster in my gold medal match.
An emotional Avalak mentioned his brother in his victory speech right after his win, a heartfelt moment for their father.
And I'm so happy, I'm so proud of him. My family and my siblings, we all had, we all had tears about it, but those tears, for me, it's part of healing.
Wrestling itself was part of Avalak's healing.
Wrestling saved my life. It didn't just change me. I was just around a misguided crowd. Best I could say is it saved me from a life behind bars or even worse.
Now he's focused on his next goal.
The goal to the Olympics.
That's something people in Cambridge Bay say they can see in 2024. Ikiluak Avalak competing at the Summer Olympics in Paris. Anita Taylor, CBC News, Cambridge Bay, Nunavut.
A lonely, rocky outpost, the site of an historic landmark centuries old and abandoned. What the future holds for Alaska's oldest lighthouse stays with us.
No one wants a garden full of weeds or thistles, but what exactly are you supposed to do with those unwanted weeds?
This here is creeping bellflower. Here it has quite a pretty flower.
Sure, these are pretty, but don't let them fool you. They're actually one of more than 40 species the city does not want in your green bin or yard waste.
There's 2 categories. There's prohibited noxious weeds, which require complete eradication of those weeds. And then there's noxious weeds, where we have to control and prevent the spread of those populations of weeds.
Don't worry about memorizing the entire list, because as it turns out, you really shouldn't be putting any weeds in your green bin.
Invasive weeds are known to spread very effectively through both their seeds as well as their roots. And so when you place those into the green bin, there's a lot of potential for those plants to spread through the compost that will eventually be made by the material in those green bins.
with one notable exception.
When it comes to the yard waste and the food scraps bins, it's best to put in material that is non-invasive. So plants like dandelion, plants that don't fall under the regulated weed list are safe to put into your green bin for composting.
When in doubt, the black bin seems to be your best bet. Emily Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Edmonton.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. Stream your favorite CBC dramas or comedies 24/7 on demand on the CBC Gem app. Plus, you can live stream CBC Vancouver News. Check it out at gem.cbc.ca. And never miss a special programming series or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
An isolated canal along the Alaska Panhandle, not far from BC and the town of Atlin, is where you'll find the Eldrick Rock Lighthouse. It's abandoned and has been for most of the century, but it is also the oldest lighthouse in the state, and the reason a group of dedicated volunteers is visiting the lonely outpost. We were there for their first overnight stay on the island. Take a look.
Emerging from the clouds, the island of Eldrick Rock appears from afar. It's a monument that captivates all those who see it. For the last half-century, the lighthouse has stood empty. But this summer, the island welcomed people again. 10 people, volunteers from across Alaska's southeast, braved the rocky waters to spend a week inside its walls. They're part of a team vying to bring the lighthouse back to life.
Our goal is to have all the living spaces, the kitchen, bathroom, cleared and cleaned and tested by next year to open to the public.
The lighthouse was built in the wake of a tragedy. Dozens of lives lost at sea in a winter storm.
Here to the north of the island was where the steamship Clare Nevada wrecked in 1898. It was full of Yukon gold from the gold rush, but unfortunately they had explosives aboard and hit a rock right at the tip of this and exploded. There was flames seen from the mainland. So the Congress at that time dedicated funding from the United States to build 5 lighthouses in this area, Eldrick Rock being the last one of them built. Preservation agencies around the state have recognized that this is worth the time, the funds, and the effort to save.
To the volunteers working here, the lighthouse is a hidden gem that shows off the best of Alaska's southeastern coast.
I like it the way it is, so let's keep it that way, and if we can restore this place to something to be proud of, I think that's worthwhile and worth my time.
It hurts my feelings, that's why.
We think over time it can be self-sustaining as we make it open to the public and have them realize the value of it, contribute, either have functions here or weddings type of thing. Technology will replace the need for lighthouses, but what the technology doesn't do is keep the history intact.
That was Anna Bathe reporting not far from the BC border along the Alaska Panhandle. Supposed to be an absolutely beautiful part of the Pacific coast. Not many people get up there, though I hear it is very, very worth it if you can. That's all tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. Thanks for being with us. Our Isabel Regan will be in this chair tomorrow night. Good night.